Some people throw thorns in your path, thinking they've built your end. But fate, it has a twisted sense of humor. Those thorns didn't stop your steps. They sharpened your stride, and now the very ones who laughed at your struggle are choking on the dust you left behind. That's the law of cosmic balance. No force in this universe allows injustice to echo unanswered. The energy you send out always returns, and those who tried to derail your rise are starting to feel the slow, surgical weight of consequence. See, life doesn't miss. It simply waits. And while your enemies were busy designing your downfall, they unknowingly built the staircase to your next level. It's ironic how their hate became your fuel. They thought watching you fall would be their victory, but now they're haunted not by your silence, but by your evolution. You weren't broken, you were activated. And when the universe marks someone for impact, every attack against them becomes a reflection of the attacker's insecurity. That's the true curse. Not losing to you, but watching you win in a system they thought they controlled. This video isn't about revenge. It's about recognition. The chosen ones are rising, and you are one of them. So if you've felt this shift in your soul, that quiet pull toward greatness, you're not imagining it. It's alignment. Like this video, subscribe to the channel and let the world know you didn't survive the storm. You became it. Before we go any further, pause, because what you're about to hear isn't content, it's consequence. The ones who tried to shatter you are now trapped inside the chaos they created. Their games sparked a wildfire that's no longer under their control. And you? You're the one rising from the ashes with fire in your eyes. So if this already feels personal, it's because it is. Tap that like button to charge this message with force. Hit subscribe, not just to follow, but to align with those who were never meant to stay hidden. Drop the number 99 in the comments to anchor your energy in this moment, because this isn't just a video. It's the mirror your enemies never wanted you to look into. If you're still watching, it means you're not just surviving, you're awakening. And the storm they tried to drown you in, you're about to walk through it untouched. Number 1. Never laugh at someone's breaking point. God might be recording the scene you'll regret. Let's talk about the ones who didn't just cross the line, they danced on it. The ones who treated your breakdown like theater and your pain like entertainment. See, they weren't just unkind, they were addicted to your destruction. There's a kind of darkness that doesn't come from confusion or hurt. It comes from pure, deliberate cruelty. And that's the kind that smiled while you suffered. They didn't want healing, they wanted havoc, and they loved every minute of watching you unravel. To them, your struggle was performance art, your silence, fuel, your confusion, amusement, your breakdowns, the highlight of their day. But here's the twist. While they were watching you collapse, the universe was watching them. You were never just a victim in their circus. You were the mirror they refused to face. And every smirk they flashed while you crumbled was a receipt being stamped, not by your hand, but by something far greater than their understanding. Some of them didn't even realize how far gone they were. That's the scary part. Cruelty had become so normal to them, it passed for casual conversation. They twisted words, planted seeds of doubt, flipped the script, and made you question your own reality. And when you started to break under the weight of what they did, they clapped in secret, then walked around pretending to be concerned. But here's where everything turns. What they called weakness was actually pressure, and pressure, when applied to the right soul, doesn't collapse it. It converts it. While they were feasting on your downfall, the universe was preparing your rebirth. They thought they were winning because you didn't fight back. But they didn't realize that silence doesn't always mean surrender. Sometimes it's strategy. The quieter you got, the louder their consequences became. Because energy doesn't lie, it doesn't forget, and it doesn't care about their excuses. They thought they were breaking you, but in reality, they were building your legend. Their mockery became your momentum. Their betrayal became your blueprint. Their lies carved the path you were always meant to walk. And now that you've started rising, the panic in their eyes is louder than any apology they never gave. They're not haunted by what they did. They're haunted by the fact that it didn't work. Because here's what they'll never understand. Some people are wired to rise under fire, and when you mess with someone built like that, you don't just invite karma, you summon collapse. So let them gossip, let them whisper, let them act confused about how you made it out. But you know the truth. Number 2. Don't mistake someone's suffering as weakness. It might be the evidence that convicts you in heaven's court. See, when they saw you break behind closed doors, they assumed they were winning. When you chose peace instead of clapping back, they misread it as powerlessness. But you weren't weak, you were gathering proof. And while they laughed at your restraint, every bruise you covered up was building a case they'll soon wish never existed. The chosen ones don't fight with noise. We fight with record keeping, and the universe keeps better notes than any courtroom. Every lie they told about you, every manipulation behind your back, every fake story to make you look like the villain, they thought it all faded with time, but it didn't. It just stacked, quietly, systematically. You didn't retaliate. You evolved. You let them have the last word while reality prepared the final verdict. Because when you're marked for legacy, you don't need to throw stones. Your silence becomes the loudest evidence in the room. And now they're feeling that shift. Confusion is creeping into their wins. Their fake peace is cracking. Why? Because the receipts they never thought mattered are being stamped, not by you, but by the very energy they played with. They should have known better. When someone suffers with dignity, the system doesn't forget. Your tears weren't collapse. They were silent witnesses. And now those witnesses are speaking back, in loss, in regret, in collapse. They thought you'd be the one breaking forever. Now they're the ones under investigation, and this time the judgment isn't coming from a courtroom. Number 3. Handle every soul with caution. You might be touching a living altar wired for divine retaliation. You weren't just a person they mistreated. You were a live wire connected to something far greater, a walking altar, a soul laced with force they couldn't comprehend, let alone control. And they didn't handle you. They mishandled you, recklessly, arrogantly, like you were disposable. That's where they signed their own sentence. There's a reason the fallout in their life feels chaotic. It's because they violated sacred territory without reading the warning signs. When someone is marked for impact, for transformation, for legacy, every wound inflicted on them echoes back with precision. You weren't just absorbing cruelty. You were storing it, stacking it, and sending it back through channels they thought didn't exist. That's why their sleep is broken. That's why their peace is rotting from the inside out. They didn't just cross a boundary. They trespassed on something cosmic. What they touched wasn't weak, it was loaded. And now that the energy has reversed, the same fire they thought they could aim at you is crawling up their own walls. Not because you fought back, but because something greater is reclaiming the balance they disrupted. Let this be clear. When they disrespected you, they didn't just hurt a person. They triggered a system. And that system doesn't need permission to respond. That's the curse of mishandling the chosen. You don't realize what you've done until it's already unraveling everything you built. Number 4. Think twice before attacking a chosen one. You might be declaring war on God himself. They didn't hate you because of what you did. They hated you because of what you carried. Your presence didn't offend them. It exposed them. You didn't even have to speak. Just existing in your truth made their lies tremble. Every time you walked in the room, their mask slipped just a little more. And instead of doing the work to face themselves, they made you the enemy. What they didn't realize is this: when you come after someone who was forged in pain and refined in silence, you're not just starting drama. You're igniting a war you're not built to survive. You weren't picked at random. You were selected for impact. You were born carrying weight most people can't hold for 5 minutes. And when someone tries to sabotage that kind of energy, they're not just playing games, they're setting their own world on fire. They thought they were just pushing your buttons. What they were actually doing was pulling the trigger on their own collapse. Because chosen ones aren't protected by pity, they're protected by principle. There are certain people you just don't mess with. Not because they'll fight back with rage, but because the forces behind them fight back with precision. And by the time your enemies realize they crossed the line, it's already too late. The fallout has begun. So let them gossip, let them scheme. Every move they make out of hate only sharpens your elevation. They didn't just come for you, they declared war on something they'll never understand. And now they're losing a battle they never saw coming. Number 5. When heaven is silent, it's not ignoring. It's stacking a case you can't escape from. They thought your silence was a sign you'd given up. They thought the stillness meant safety. But what they didn't realize is that silence has never meant safety for those who inflict harm. It means the consequences are being calibrated, slowly, meticulously. And by the time the storm hits, it's already too late to outrun it. See, while they were busy throwing dirt on your name, building lies like altars, and laughing behind closed doors, life was stacking evidence. Every manipulation, every whisper, every calculated dig, all of it was quietly recorded. The kind of record no apology can erase and no fake kindness can rewrite. You asked yourself why nothing was happening, why the betrayal went unchecked, why the pain kept coming and justice stayed silent. But now you understand. The delay wasn't denial, it was strategy. It wasn't inaction, it was alignment. Because when a chosen one is targeted without cause, the response doesn't come in warnings. It arrives in impact. And that's what's unfolding now. Not payback, but precision. They kept going because they mistook grace for permission. They believed comfort meant immunity, but they forgot one universal truth: timing is a weapon. And when the clock finally strikes, what's unleashed can't be reasoned with. They didn't just poke the bear, they woke something ancient, something exact. And now the fallout isn't yours to manage, it's theirs to survive. Number 6. Recognize the test. When it shows up as a person, failing, it could rewrite your destiny. Not every test looks like a battle. Sometimes it walks in wearing a calm face and a kind tone, and that test was you. They thought you were just another person, another phase, another name to manipulate and discard. But you weren't sent into their life randomly. You were the measuring stick fate used to weigh their character, and they failed without even realizing what was being measured. You weren't there for their validation. You were their evaluation. Every opportunity they had to treat you with honor, they twisted it into control. Every act of loyalty you gave, they weaponized it. Every time you showed restraint, they saw it as weakness. But here's what they didn't understand. How they treated you wasn't a reflection of your worth. It was a mirror of their own soul. They were never under attack. They were under observation. And the moment they chose ego over empathy, deception over honesty, cruelty over kindness, that's when the shift began. See, chosen ones are never just people. We are divine checkpoints. And when someone fails the test of handling a chosen one, the consequences don't hit right away, but when they do, it's undeniable. Now the energy is reversing. The very space they tried to shrink you in is collapsing around them, not because you cursed them, but because they failed their moment of truth. Their downfall isn't karma, it's correction. So let them say it was just a fallout. Let them claim it was justified, but deep down they know they didn't lose you. They got disqualified, and destiny doesn't rewind for those who fumble the sacred. Number 7. What you build on the back of someone's pain might be the fire that destroys your future. You can't build peace on the bones of someone else's suffering and expect the ground to stay solid. But that's exactly what they did, stacked comfort on top of your collapse. They thought no one was watching while they profited from your pain. But pain, especially the kind you never deserved, never stays buried. It rises, it spreads, and it returns to sender with interest. They were so confident when they broke you, so sure that what they built using your silence as a foundation would stand. But chosen ones aren't victims, they're triggers. When you attack them unjustly, you don't just hurt a person, you pull on the fabric of universal balance, and balance always corrects. They didn't realize they were tying themselves to a slow-burning fire. Every lie they told, every opportunity they stole, every smile they faked, it all soaked the rope in fuel. And now, that rope is tightening around their peace, their progress, their future. They thought they escaped, thought your silence meant permission, but silence isn't surrender, it's setup. You were the mirror they smashed to avoid seeing themselves, and now the shards are cutting back. They didn't sabotage you, they cursed themselves, because anything built on betrayal will eventually collapse under truth. That's not revenge, that's law. So while they scramble to save what's left, you walk forward, not in bitterness, but in clarity. You didn't need to fight back. The moment they tried to rise by stepping on you, the countdown began. Not to your fall, to theirs. Number 8. Mocking someone's tears might trigger a realm you're not authorized to battle in. They thought your tears were weakness. They saw your silence, your shaking hands, the nights you couldn't even form words, and they laughed, mocked, whispered behind your back like they'd caught you exposed. But what they didn't realize is that your tears weren't breakdowns. They were blueprints, warnings, echoes into realms they'll never be allowed to touch. See, when you're a chosen one, your pain carries weight. It doesn't vanish into thin air, it transmits. Those tears you cried alone, they didn't fall into nothing. They hit ground like seismic alarms. They shifted something bigger than emotion. They rattled the system that watches in silence, but never forgets. And the people who ridiculed you, who called you dramatic, too sensitive, weak, they weren't laughing at just a person. They were provoking a force they'll never be equipped to handle. You weren't melting, you were being reforged. And the realm they triggered with their arrogance, that realm doesn't send warnings, it sends consequences. Now the irony. While they laughed at your breakdowns, they were writing their own collapse. Every mocking smirk added fuel to a fire they thought you'd never survive. But you're still standing, stronger, sharper, rising. And they're starting to feel that strange pull, the kind that tightens everything around you but no one can name it. That's what happens when you disrespect what was never meant to be touched. Let them mock, let them explain it away. Because what they made fun of wasn't your weakness. It was the very storm that's now coming for everything they tried to build. Number 9. Don't confuse delay with permission. Rebellion that ignores warnings always ends in collapse. They knew what they were doing. Don't let them pretend it was a mistake. This wasn't ignorance, it was calculated rebellion. And the worst part, they thought the silence around them was approval. They misread every delay in consequence as a green light to keep escalating. But what they didn't realize is the universe doesn't skip justice. It stacks it, quietly, relentlessly. See, the delay wasn't mercy, it was rope. Rope long enough for them to tangle themselves in their own deception. They had chances, subtle signs, moments of conviction, gut instincts screaming at them to stop. But they chose to push harder, hurt deeper, smile wider. And now the fire they kept feeding is roaring back at them, not out of nowhere, but out of every ignored warning. They thought they were invincible, that just because the consequences didn't fall instantly, they never would. But when you're dealing with a chosen one, the rules change. Your patience was protection, for them. Your silence delayed the collapse, for them. But the moment they crossed one line too many, it all started shifting. Now everything they built on top of their ego is crumbling beneath their feet. Not because you wanted it, but because their rebellion wrote its own ending. And here's the brutal truth. There is no immunity from universal consequence, especially when you mock the divine timing that protects a chosen one. Number 10. Respect the threshold of a chosen soul. Once judgment activates, even mercy bows out. There's a limit to everything, even to the silence of those who carry fire in their bones. What they never realized is that chosen ones aren't wired like the rest. There's a spiritual weight inside you, a built-in threshold that isn't just emotional, it's universal. And once it's crossed, the atmosphere changes. You didn't retaliate, you endured. But endurance is not weakness. It's the last warning the universe gives before consequence takes over. Every insult, every manipulation, every cruel game they played stacked like coals under pressure. And when that pressure hit its boiling point, something ancient and irreversible awakened. They thought your silence meant safety. What it really meant was time running out. See, the world likes to mock quiet people until the storm comes and they realize the silence was sacred. You were their final test, and they didn't just fail, they tore the page. The moment they crossed your threshold, they triggered a collapse, not just around you, but inside everything they built while disrespecting your presence. And here's the truth they're starting to feel in their bones. Once that line is crossed, there are no do-overs. Mercy has stepped back. Balance has stepped in. The universe doesn't apologize when it restores order. You were the calm before the fire. And now, they're learning that some storms don't announce themselves. They arrive. And chosen ones, they become them. Number 11. Be careful who you mock in their pain. You might end up needing their prayers to survive your own fire. They laughed when you broke, snickered behind screens, rolled their eyes when you spoke your truth. To them, your pain was comedy. Your collapse was content. Your breakdowns, just another reason to feel superior. They labeled you dramatic, emotional, unstable, all while you were silently bleeding from wounds they helped create. But the twist they never saw coming, the tables don't just turn, they flip with fire. Now they're the ones losing sleep. The chaos they mocked in your life is now echoing in theirs. The silence they dismissed in you is becoming deafening in their own world. They thought they'd always be on top. But karma has perfect balance, and it doesn't need your help to serve justice. Now, their life is unraveling, slowly, quietly, exactly how yours did. And guess whose strength they'll crave once their walls start crumbling? Yours. But this time, you're not available. Not because you're bitter, but because your presence was a privilege they disrespected. They mocked the very power that could have interceded for them. Now they face the consequences alone. That's what they never understood. Chosen ones aren't just survivors. They're spiritual vaults. When they laughed at your pain, they laughed at their own protection. and now that protection is gone. What's coming for them? They'll feel it deeply. Number 12. Control isn't leadership. If you try to play God in someone's life, you'll lose his protection in yours. Some people don't want connection, they want control. And when they can't control you, they'll call you difficult, ungrateful, or broken. But here's the truth they'll never admit. They weren't trying to support you. They were trying to own you. They disguised manipulation as mentorship. They offered advice only to trap you in self-doubt. They planted insecurity like seeds and waited for your collapse like it was a harvest. And when you began to question their grip, they called it rebellion. But it wasn't rebellion. It was awakening. The entire time, they weren't leading you. They were playing God in your life, setting themselves up as the ultimate voice, the final judge, the gatekeeper of your worth. But here's the irony. When someone tries to control a chosen one, they end up destroying their own illusion of power. See, the chosen aren't wired for submission to false thrones. You were built to rise, not shrink. You were designed to break chains, not wear them. And when their grip started slipping, the panic wasn't about losing you. It was about losing the role they built their ego around. But here's what hit hardest. They didn't just lose your loyalty. They lost their cover. The masks fell, the influence shattered, the audience left the show, because no one gets to hijack your purpose and walk away blessed. They wanted to dominate. Now they're unraveling. They tried to be the god of your story. Now they're not even in the next chapter. Now that the masks have fallen and the fire they lit is burning through their illusions, the truth stands tall. You were never the victim. You were the shift. Their attempts to control, crush, and silence, you only activated a version of you they couldn't handle. And now, you're not just surviving, you're ascending. So if this message struck a nerve, it's because it was meant for you. Like this video to fuel the movement. Subscribe so you never miss a message built for the chosen. And drop a comment. Let the world know you didn't just endure. You evolved.